The first encounter reads, I was 12 or 13 when this happened. My mother's best friend has a brother who owned a small camper trailer. It was the kind you tow, but it had a small bathroom in it and 2 beds. The kind that fold into tables and a tiny kitchen. He let my mother and her friend, along with myself and my best friend, have it for a weekend. This happened in the Middle South area of Massachusetts in the rural part of Worcester County. I've researched it a fair bit and didn't find any sightings of dogmen here. I only turned up one Bigfoot sighting way back in the 70s, miles from where this happened. The trailer was in a smallish campground. I don't remember its name. It was summer after school got out, but I don't remember which month. Where the trailer was parked, we had a clear view of the check-in, small convenience store, building, and the pool, but the rest of the campsites were pretty far. Most were out of sight, and the ones that weren't were empty. The trailer itself was close to the tree line. Some of the longer tree limbs actually touched it. The land in that part of the state is somewhat forested, but I'd say there's more farmland and fields there than forest, especially near this campground. There were woods, but they weren't terribly thick or continuous. Standing facing the trailer, the admin buildings were off to the left. To the right, much closer, probably 2 car lengths, were a couple picnic tables. Other than the trees ringing the campground, it was fairly open and very slightly hilly. The whole campground had a really creepy feel to it. It honestly looked like something out of a Southern Gothic story. It was a bit run down. The roads in were lined with cornfields. The people that ran it were, not to be mean, but sort of redneck types, right down to faded denim overalls and faint accents. They were pleasant enough, but sort of distant and reserved, especially the guy. He hardly ever looked up when he spoke and didn't deal much with guests. One night my friend and I, who I'm still close friends with to this day, were either getting ready to or had just watched a movie on the tiny television we had. My mother and her friend were out on the picnic table smoking. I want to stop and say I've always been a pretty level-headed person, and I was often told as a kid that I was very mature for my age. The movie we were watching was Aladdin, so it's not like I had horror movies on the brain. Actually, I had never seen a horror movie at that point in my life. If you were standing in the front door, we were in bed on the right. The light switch was on the opposite side of the trailer. My friend said we should turn off the main light and just leave the bathroom light on so we could see the screen better. Now, the bed on the other side of the trailer was the kitchen table, and it was halfway set into a little alcove. There was a window at the back of the trailer over the foot of the bed. To turn off the light, I had to take one step into the alcove. The switch was a few feet, 2 at most, from the window. It was dark out, so I couldn't actually see out the screen into the trees. As I reached for the light switch, something growled. It was the deepest, most resonant growl I've ever heard. I'm 23 now and work at a dog daycare grooming facility, so I've heard a lot of big dogs make a variety of vocalizations. My co-worker owns a 100-pound lab, and her growl doesn't compare to this. I was and still am a huge nature nerd, and I've heard various animal noises in zoos and on television/YouTube. I haven't heard that sound again. The quality of it was canine, or at least reminiscent of one, but it was so deep. I could feel it in my sternum. There weren't many dogs around at all, and we never heard any barking during our stay. I'm positive this was not a dog. We don't have wolves, and it was just too deep anyway, both from the sound and what happened next. I froze when I heard it for a good 5 to 8 seconds. I looked right at my friend, and she was reading the movie case, totally oblivious. I asked if she made a noise, and she said no. What kind of noise? She's not at all the type to play pranks or mess with me. My eyes were watering, and I must have looked scared because she got white and I knew it wasn't her. That's when I moved. It took me maybe 5 bounding steps to hit the bed, but in the split second before I hit the bed, as I was jumping, something hit the trailer. This trailer was at least 7 feet tall. It was up off the ground enough that you had to use the 2 fold-down steps to get in the door. The hit came right above our bed, near the roof. It was such a strong impact it shook the whole trailer. It's hard to describe, but it was like a small area of impact, like a fist or rock would have made. I don't think it was a rock though, because it was too forceful and there were no large rocks on the ground in the morning. We of course started screaming and hid under our blankets. I don't know how long we hid, but I think it was probably 15 minutes max. My mother and her friend had been outside the whole time. When I got the guts to peek out the door, they were out there smoking and laughing as usual. They hadn't heard a thing, even us screaming. I've heard black bears growl on television and in person many times. This wasn't the same, tone or quality-wise. Plus, we don't often get bears in this area of Massachusetts. When we got older, we wondered if it was a Bigfoot, but the alleged recordings and eyewitness descriptions don't really match. That growl was so deep and menacing that to this day I won't go near an open window at night. If I have to, I literally get shaky, and I'm not a weak person. My friend doesn't remember as much as I do, as she wasn't paying attention. My mother and her friend believe me, but never heard a thing. The back of the camper was close enough to the trees that they very well may not have been able to see what growled at me, even if it was huge. I still absolutely love the woods. I go hiking whenever possible. I'm currently working on climbing as many of the White Mountains in New Hampshire as I can. I'm definitely always hyper alert though whenever I'm in the woods since this incident. I've only had 2 other experiences that could maybe be called strong. A very odd smell/feeling on Mount Acela in New Hampshire, and a strange 4-legged canine in the city I live in. I've always wondered what growled in that window and why. The next story reads, "Hello, I want to share my encounter with what I believe to be a dogman. Now before I continue, I want to say that during my encounter I never saw a dogman. I only heard strange noises that I can't seem to explain. My encounter happened when I was between the ages of 9 and 11. I'm honestly not sure, it's been so many years, but I still remember it like it happened yesterday. Shortly before my encounter, my younger sister and I had been talking, and somehow she brought up how she had seen something that she said resembled a werewolf outside her bedroom window one night. She described the creature as being roughly 5 to 6 feet in height, covered in hair and walking on 2 legs like a person. At first, I thought she might have possibly seen a Sasquatch until she told me it had a snout and pointed ears like a wolf or dog. In all honesty, I thought she had dreamt the whole thing up until she told me that she had seen it several more times before that. Still, I thought that she had just imagined it and quickly brushed it aside. That was until a month or so later when I had my own encounter. I awoke one fall night, I believe it was sometime in early October around 3 a.m. For some reason I couldn't sleep, so I decided to turn on my TV to pass the time and hopefully fall back asleep. After probably 15 to 20 minutes, I heard something outside my bedroom window. At first it sounded like scurrying, and then it turned into a scratching sound, like something was dragging its fingernails across my window screen. At first I thought it might have been an insect, only to realize that it was too cold for insects to be out. Then I thought it might have been a neighbor who might have had a few beers too many, thinking they were at their house and trying to get in. So I said in a loud voice, "Go home, man, you're drunk and at the wrong house." There was no response. There was just that continuous scratching on the window screen. At that point, I was a little worried and noticed that my drapes were slightly open in the center towards the bottom. I also noticed that my legs could be clearly seen from the outside, so I quickly moved them. Whatever was outside immediately stopped when I moved, paused, and then began scratching faster. This continued on until the sun came up, just a continuous pawing/scratching at my window from 3:30 a.m. until 7. I was absolutely terrified the entire time. In all honesty, I felt like whatever was outside was playing with me in a malicious way and that it viewed me as food. Now, I can't say with 100% certainty that what was outside was a dog man, but I do have several good reasons to think it could have been one. Number 1, my father and I are both hunters, and everyone in our neighborhood knows we own guns. Almost everyone in our neighborhood owns one also. It would be foolish to scratch on someone's window at 3:30 a.m. and not expect a 12-gauge deer slug to come ripping through your head or chest if you did that here. Reason number 2 is, people that I have told my story to have asked me, "How do you know it wasn't a Bigfoot?" I have heard of Sasquatch peeking in people's windows and being generally very curious. However, why would one sit outside my window for almost 4 hours pawing at it? It might do that for 5 to 10 minutes, maybe. After that, it runs the risk of being seen and or shot. I just don't see it being a Bigfoot. Thanks for letting me share my story. The third story reads, I own 200 acres of land in Hillman, Michigan. One time I heard a single loud howl from what, I don't know, shut up 2 or 3 dozen coyotes. After hearing that howl, I didn't hear the coyotes for weeks. I also found 2 mangled deer carcasses on my property. We do have bears here, but I've never heard of a bear outrunning a 200-pound deer. I don't go out into the fields at night anymore because of something that happened on my property on October 26th of 2012 at about 9 p.m. Something took a doe I had shot out of the back of my truck. My truck is lifted 4.5 inches and sits on decent-sized tires. My truck had run out of gas in my back field next to a patch of woods on my property. I'd say the field is about 15 acres. It's a little spread I always use. I never had this kind of thing happen, though. After I shot the deer, I took a nap. It's what I usually do so I can give the deer time to die if it runs. I just track the trail it leaves behind. Quite a bit of time had passed since I had shot the deer, so the other deer had time to calm down and come back into the area. I had loaded the doe into the back of my truck and started the engine. Before I even hit the gas pedal, I noticed the engine was chugging, so I shut the truck off. I grabbed my headlamp and got out of the truck. When I had walked around to the back of the truck on my way back to the farmhouse, that's when all the noise started. As I was walking away from the truck, I heard turkeys up in the trees making noises and the sound of something running through the leaves. I thought it was just another deer running away. Then I noticed that the noise was getting quieter, so I stopped. What I heard next sounded like something was scratching on the side of my truck. Then I heard what sounded like a boar hog squealing, so I started running. We have hogs around here, but not very many of them. After running about 200 yards, I could see that nothing was chasing me, so I stopped running. Whatever was making those sounds, I figured it didn't see me, so I just walked the rest of the way to the house and kept listening to see if I could hear anything. While I was listening, I heard something that sounded the way a pit bull sounds when it's playing with a chew toy. Whatever it was, it made deep growling sounds and a couple of thumps that sounded like a golf ball hitting the ground. It wasn't very loud, though. I stayed up for maybe an hour listening, and then it just went quiet outside. It was completely quiet. There wasn't a single noise. The last encounter reads, While I was out walking my dog at about 5 a.m. early one morning, I turned to go down an alley. There was a very fresh dusting of snow on the ground. One side of the alley had a big space like there should have been a house there, but there wasn't. Looking at the ground right in front of me, I saw a very large set of dog tracks. They appeared to be coming through the vacant lot area on the one side of the alley and continued through the alley where I had just come. The thing that really captured my attention was the fact that the tracks were so far apart and definitely bipedal. I measured them by walking step by step from one track to the next, toe to heel, and estimated the tracks to be at least 8 feet apart. I care for wolf dogs and have spent many hours in the woods with them and have become very familiar with their tracks in the snow and how they appear when they're running. This animal had to have been quite large and moving very fast from the appearance of the tracks. My wolf dogs step in their own tracks, something I've noticed dogs don't do, and it's always obvious they're quadrupeds. I had never heard of the dogman before, but the minute I saw those tracks, I knew I was looking at something very unusual and began to research the possibilities of what could have left those tracks. This was in Ames, Iowa, late winter, early spring, 2014. Thanks all 4 of you for submitting those reports. Tonight's guest is Abe Cias. Abe, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
My name is Abe Cias. Live in Killeen, Texas, where Forward Station is, prior military. I live in Elms Grove. It's a mobile home park.
Well, thank you for your service to our country. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. When was the first time you heard the term dog man?
The first time I heard Dogman was like 3 or 4 days ago on a site.
I've got you. All of the events we're going to talk about tonight happened in and around a place called Elms Grove Park. Tell us about the place.
Elms Grove Park, there's a park within the park itself. And where I live at, there's the park section. There's a creek 100 meters away from here and nothing but woods. There's all kinds of wildlife out here. There's deer, raccoon, bobcats, all kinds of critters out here.
With all the strange things you have happening in and around that park, I wouldn't be surprised if you did have some old Indian burial mounds in the area, do you?
All I know is a woman, a Philippine woman, that her son was a historian for an Indian tribe in Arizona that lived in the corner near the wood line. And she would tell me not to go into the woods because there was something there when I first moved into the park.
Is that the woman who heard the banging on a tree late one night?
Yes.
How did that go down? She heard the bang on the tree and then she came and got you, or what happened that night?
She was walking her dog in the park at nighttime, and she was going to take it for a walk like she always does. And I got a phone call from her saying that there was something there banging the tree beside her house. So I went over there to see what was going on. She had the doors locked and everything. She was scared, terrified. But when I got there, I did not hear no banging or nothing. But I did see like a tree of some sort had nearby her house, like somebody had thrown a piece of wood or something.
Yeah, in the pre-interview, when you were going down the list of all the strange things that have happened and continue to happen in that park and around the park, wow, you've got some strange activity in that area. I'm not really sure what to think about it. Do you have many cornfields nearby?
Not cornfields, just a lot of wooded area, and the creek that runs through the park. But I know in the past, heard that there used to be a lot of tribes that used to live in this section of where I live at, or throughout the area itself in Bell County.
You told me that at nighttime, big things can be seen moving in and around the park. What's going on with that?
I've seen deer before there grazing on the grass, but this is no deer that I've been seeing. They're real dark, and they're tall. They're actually running around in the park at nighttime.
Do the parents in the area know about this and as a result keep their kids inside at night or what?
Well, there's a lot of people before that would hardly go to the park because of strange things that would happen to them. I remember some younger kids that would always go to the park and they would say there was something there, but I would tell them what they would see, and they would say it was just something dark there. But they wouldn't even go to the park either. They just pointed out the vicinity of where they would see it.
Yeah, with all the strange things going on around there, I can't blame them for not wanting to spend much time in that park. There was a homeless man you were telling me about that used to sleep under a bridge in the woods. He doesn't sleep there anymore. Tell us about him.
Yes, I seen him one time, and I gave him some water and stuff like that. Try to help him out, get on his feet. He was sleeping underneath the bridge, and he told me that one night he seen some figures on the side of the creek, and he said he was in a sleeping bag asleep, and he didn't want to move because he said what he seen was not a deer or any other kind of animal he's ever seen before. He said there were creatures of some sort. So what I did is I tried to help him out for a while. I got a tent and I put the tent by my home so he could stay here for a little bit so he can get on his feet. But he never went back there. He had moved. The first time I seen him was behind a convenience store. He was sleeping in between two air conditioning units, and he told me the story of what happened to him there.
You said he moved on and refused to sleep there, but there's someone that is currently sleeping under that bridge, a homeless person.
Yes, I just I went down to see and there's a tent set up underneath the bridge right now.
Ew, that's pretty unnerving. I wonder if that person, whoever it is, has seen anything or knows the potential danger that they're putting themselves in.
I don't know, but I'm thinking I'm gonna have to go talk to them about that area as soon as I can because I don't want nothing to happen to them.
Yeah, I'm sure if they don't know about it, they'll appreciate you filling them in on what's going on there. All right, Abe, let's talk about that first encounter you had with the dog man. What happened that night?
My AC unit had given out. I had a window fan giving me air, and I heard a woman yelling for help. I shut off the fan, and I heard the woman still yelling for help. So I came outside, and I was hearing the voice of a woman yelling for help. So I went back inside the house, grabbed a bat, and I came out, and I started following the voice, the cry for help. Went through the park. As I cut through the park, I could hear that the voice was coming from the wood line itself. So I'm out there listening to this cry of help. So I grabbed my bat that I had in hand, and I went into the darkness of the wood line, following the cry for help. When I walked through the path that was there, and I went around the bend, I could hear the voice getting closer and closer. So I kept on being cautious with my bat in my hand, ready to swing to see if I've seen somebody doing something to this woman. But when I got to a certain location in that wood line, the cry for help stopped. When the cry for help stopped, it felt weird to me because it was around 2:30 or 3 in the morning, and I'm thinking at that point in time, what am I doing out here if there's no woman to help? When I turned around, that's when I seen them. I seen 6 of them, 3 on one side of the path and 3 on the other. They were pretty tall. I would say between 8 to 9 foot tall. I could see their eyes glowing, looking at me. At that point in time, the only thing I could do is not be afraid because I don't know what kind of animal or creature I was dealing with. So I started praying within myself and tried to stay as calm as possible. As I started walking forward and praying within myself, I could see these creatures looking at me, and they were following me with their heads. I was short compared to them. I'm 5'11". I kept on walking, and I kept on praying, and I came around the bend, and as soon as I came out of the wood line, I started walking a little bit faster. When I got halfway through the park, I took up running back home. I was in shock when I got back home, that I had to take a shower just to realize what just happened in the wood line. At that point in time, my son was 5 years old, and I gave him a big hug because I believe I was in a predicament that I shouldn't be here right now.
So you hear these screams. You think it's a woman in distress in the woods. It's nighttime. You go charging up that path into the woods trying to save whoever this poor woman is. You get a certain distance in when you decide that maybe it's not worth pursuing, so you turn around, look, and see 6 dogmen. You've got 3 on either side of the path. At that point, when you saw them, you have to admit most people in that situation would be very reluctant to walk between these dogmen to try and get back home. I've got to ask you this. If you hadn't walked down that path between those 6 dogmen, what was your other option? If you went the other way, how far would you have had to go to get to anything?
I had no other option because all around me was wood line. The creek was 25 meters away from me. It was pitch dark in the woods. The only option I had was to go back down the path that I came through. I know I'm not no superhero or nothing like that, but being trained in the military, I know fear in combat, you're not supposed to fear fear itself. So that's exactly what I had to do, is just focus fear out of my mind at that point in time.
I wish I had that gene, because in that situation, Abe, I don't see how I could have put fear totally out of my mind. That's not a good situation to be in. All right, so you're walking down that path. You've got 6 dogmen on either side of you. You said they're between 8 and maybe 9-ish feet tall. As you're walking amongst them, did you hear them make any sounds? Give us a play-by-play on what you saw, heard, smelled, anything like that.
I believe they were sensing if I was afraid of them, because as I was walking forward, I seen them looking at me, and as I was passing them, their heads were looking at me to see, I believe, sense me, sense if I had any fear in my body of some sort. They was seeing what I was going to do. I'm thinking if I would have took off running or been afraid, that maybe I wouldn't have made it out of the woods that night. That if I would have took off running, they probably would have chased me. That's what I believe, like any wild animal would do.
I don't think it can be argued you handled it the right way. If you hadn't have handled that situation the right way, you wouldn't be here to even talk about it, so hats off to you for that. You've got some brass to be able to handle it the way you did.
It was about, at that point in time, the only thing I could think of is make it home safely. I had to zone them out of my mind, even though they was there looking at me. I had to take my mind somewhere else. The only thing I could do is pray within myself. I believe that that's what helped me, was the prayer that I was saying the Our Father within myself, and that's, I believe, what helped me, guide me back out into safety.
Well, it sure sounds like you did have some outside help that night to be able to get through that nasty situation. When you saw the 6 dogmen, was there any kind of a variation in their appearance? Did they all look the same color, same build, same eye color? What did you notice on that?
They were all around the same height. What stood out the most, since it was pitch dark, I think I had no flashlight or nothing like that, was their eyes. And as high their eyes were, they were way taller than me. That's what, it was their size that kind of freaked me out the most, how big they were. And they were standing. They was standing on 2 legs. I could just see their silhouette of their bodies and the eyes at that point in time. The glowing eyes that was looking at me. They were white.
White eyes.
White eyes. That's what I seen that night.
Wow, that's strange. That had to be one sight to see. How close to the path were these dogmen?
The path itself, I would say, would be like 7 to 8 foot wide, and I walked along the center, so there was probably like 4 feet from each side away from me. They were close, real close to the edge of the path, that I could see them standing there. I'm more sure they could reach and touch me, as big as they were.
That was going to be my next question. It sounds like they were close enough where if they wanted to, they could have reached out at any moment and grabbed you.
Oh yeah, they could have easily, I believe, taken me out there from each side. I felt set up. When I turned around and I seen these creatures there and I didn't hear the woman yelling for help, I felt like I got tricked into going there like an ambush of sort.
I've heard that they might be able to make sounds like a baby's cry and some other strange sounds. I've actually heard recordings of strange sounds that they've made, but I've never heard any sounds that could even approach sounding like a woman screaming, so I don't really know what that's all about, what made that sound, but it sure makes you wonder. If they can make a sound like that and lure people into the woods somehow, that just makes it even worse. If I understand this correctly, you never did hear them make any sounds. As you were walking between them, you're saying that they were silent.
Silent. I didn't see them standing there when I was going towards the voice, but when I turned around, I believe they were right along me all along. As I walked through the path, I just didn't see them because I was my mind was focused on finding the woman yelling for help. But when I turned my back around, they was right there behind me.
Ooh.
I believe they was trying to sneak up on me of some sort.
That is strange. If they were trying to sneak up on you, Abe, what I really don't understand is you turned around and wound up walking right between the whole group of them. They could have had you right there on the spot if they would have wanted to. If they were trying to sneak up on you from behind, I wonder what the end goal was.
I'm thinking that they wanted me to get scared and take off running a different direction instead of the path that I traveled. I believe they wanted me to go run towards the wood line further deep into the woods so they could get me even better. Well, that's what I think. But like I said, I focused on not being afraid, and I started praying, and I knew that through prayer that I was going to come out into safety, one way or the other. I'm just glad that nothing happened to me that night.
Oh, I'm glad too. From the way you describe it, I think a countless number of things could have happened that night that would have resulted in a very unfortunate outcome. I'm just so glad that somehow you're able to get through that situation in one piece. What a nightmare. Now, this is kind of related to what we've been talking about here. There have been situations where I've been in a situation that was really bad. Nothing like that, but I've been in some bad situations before. In the heat of the moment, I handled it like a champ, but after the fact, I didn't handle it so well. You think about it too much. Sometimes you might have a nightmare or two, or maybe more. Did you have any lingering after effects, bad nightmares, PTSD from that experience, or what?
Well, after that, I stopped going to the woods at nighttime. As a matter of fact, I kept my son away from going to the park there for a long time. Or if I see children at the park, even during the day, I will go and tell them to leave, that they shouldn't be there because of what happened to me. I was afraid that something might happen to them. Anybody I would see there at the park, I would tell them to be careful. I wouldn't say exactly what I've seen, but I would tell them there was wild animals there to be careful. So I was looking out for the people that will go into that section of the park where I had that encounter.
No one knows what it takes to get these things to attack, why they attack, when they do, but I think if almost anyone else would have been placed in that situation that you found yourself in, I'd say there's probably a 90% chance that that person wouldn't have walked out of there alive. Moving on to a different topic here, Abe, you talked about that den, that strange den you found in the park. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I found a den, and there was a lot of skeletons of skulls of different animals. But I found a Doberman dog, a black Doberman dog, with his spine ripped out of its back, and it looked like the kill was maybe like a week or 2 weeks old, but he was laying there with his spine ripped out.
That had to be one sight to see. You said you did find a whole bunch of skulls in that den as well?
Yes, different skulls from different animals. You could see the sheds of the furs, different furs, all over the ground where this den was. I've seen two of those dens. One was in an open field, and the other one was underneath a big tree in another wooded section, and a lot of bones there also. In the park itself, I found the tails of cats and dogs, but no bodies. So I don't know what happens to the bodies of this animal. But I always find tails of raccoons, tails of foxes, tails of squirrels, but no bodies, just the tails.
That's really strange. Sure makes you wonder what's going on behind that. Well, moving on, Abe, let's talk about the other dogman encounter you had. From what I understand, you had this one with your nephew?
Yes, it was. I was sitting in front of my mobile home on a picnic table. He was just fixing to graduate high school, and he was talking about wanting to join the military. So I was telling him what to do if he wanted to join in. And as we were talking, it was around 1, 2 in the morning. It was fresh, a fresh night. I felt like something was looking at me. When I turned to my right, I seen a head over my neighbor's SUV. And at that point in time, I thought somebody was trying to break into the SUV. So I took off over there to see who it was. But then, as I went around the SUV, I seen something going out the back gate of the yard. So I was telling my nephew what I seen, and as I looked across my yard, I could see something walking on all fours. At first, I thought it was a dog. Then I thought it was a deer. But then when I looked at it, it looked too big on all fours to be a dog or a deer. So it was on the other street, and I was on my street. So we started walking parallel to it, me and my nephew. And something strange happened. It stood up on two legs, and it was huge, very muscular. His legs were curved a certain way backwards, I guess like a dog of some sort, but the upper torso was real long. He had a long neck and pointy ears. It was massive, and as far as I could see, it looked grayish at that point in time. It started running, but it wasn't a run. It was more of a long stride, kind of like when a deer prances to get away when it gets startled. Well, that's how it was running. It was a long stride, like a deer would jump. In which my nephew, he's way younger than me, and he took off sprinting. He was in track and everything, and he couldn't catch up to it. It was too fast. It had a long stride. It was all muscular. I never seen nothing like that. His legs were massive, but they looked muscular, just like the upper body was very muscular. It had a long neck. I could see the side of its face, but it was all grayish. It seemed like it was more. I don't think it was scared of us, but I think it was more just wanted to get away from us. We lost it in the wood line by the creek. We didn't even see it go from the sidewalk into the creek. That's how fast it moved. I thought he was going to run on all fours, but it didn't. It took off running on twos.
You said you and your nephew were running after it. Did you really think you had a chance in catching it, or what?
Not a chance in catching it. I wish I would have had a camera or recorder to record that event that happened, but like I said, I was just outside talking to my nephew, so I didn't have no camera, no recorder. I just wanted to see where it was going to, and I seen it go past the mobile home, and that's the last time I seen it, which the only thing I could think, he ran into the wood line. But yes, we had no chance of catching it. It was too fast.
I'm so glad you didn't catch that thing. I don't think that would have been a good situation if you had.
He was looking at us, chasing it, because it turned his head some, looking at us. But it reminded me of how a donkey looks at you before it takes a kick at you. But it was pretty big. The power it had it wasn't even moving its arms or nothing like a normal human being would move his arms to run. It was just using the power of its legs, and it was running fast. I don't even consider it a run. I consider it more of I guess one step is like a run for it, but it was too big. It was massive that by the time it took 3 or 4 steps, it dusted us. It was too fast.
Yeah, sounds like it was pretty fast. These things normally are, so I'm not surprised it was so easily able to outdistance you and your nephew there.
The stride of it, I think it's what gave it the distance from us. It's stride. It's a long stride.
I'm not sure how long after that incident it was, Abe, but you told me about a picture that you took of what you'd believe to be a dog man. Tell us about that photo.
The following day, when I had the first incident in the wood line, I went back to take pictures of the area just to see what I caught in the vicinity. Because at that point in time, I didn't know what had happened the night that I heard the woman yell. It just felt weird to me of what happened to me, and I just wanted to go to the area to take pictures to see if I caught anything. The sun was settling down, and I took some pictures, and I believe I showed you the picture of what I believe to be maybe a dog man standing by a tree. You could see something, but it's not a good picture. Since I had the encounter, I'll be able to tell if it was the same thing I seen the night before, but it looks the same, the silhouette of what I've seen. So I think they were still in the area at that point in time.
You sent that picture to me. I took a good look at it. It wasn't clear enough to tell if that actually is a dog man or not. It might be, but like I told you after you had sent it to me, I just couldn't see the subject clearly enough to make a solid determination on exactly what I was looking at, so I really don't know, but I will post that picture in the YouTube version of this show.
I just try to look up for people not to be afraid, not to have fear if they're running to something like this. It's hard because that's in our nature to be afraid. It's part of our structure of the senses, but I hope nobody ever encounters something like that, especially at night. I'm a spiritualist, and I used to go out there in the park all the time, and I used to go walking at night. I don't do that no more. Not after that incident.
You used to cut through the woods to go to the store, Abe. You used to take the same path every time. One day you found something that was interesting on the path. Tell us about that.
Well, I remember one time I was cutting through the path, and I found the path is like a little cliff. You climb it, and there's a tree that's there, that we would normally grab the tree and pull ourselves up. When we try to go across the path again, the tree was broken in half, like something broke it. Not just that tree, and then there was another tree that was blocking the path itself, like something didn't want us to go through that path.
Any ideas on what might have done that? Do you think maybe a person did it?
I don't think it was a person because that tree was pretty thick, and the way the break looks, it doesn't look like it was sawed off. It looks like it was just broken. You could see the tree was broken, and it was a solid tree. It was just broken, like it got broken like when you break a stick. That's the way the break looks.
So the tree wasn't dead. This was a live tree that was broken and torn down.
Exactly, a live tree. It was
Ew.
broken.
About how big around was it?
I would say it was probably like 2 to 3 foot wide.
Ew. Yeah, no person did that. Moving on, not long ago you took a group of ghost hunters into the woods there. Now they probably wouldn't go into those woods even if you paid them. Why is that?
I took them there because they said that they believe what I encountered there the night. I told them a story of what happened to me, and they said that maybe I might have encountered something else, like a bad spirit or bad omen of some sort. But when I took them there, something happened to them. One of the females took off running because she said she was seeing something, heard something, and as she was taking off running out of the wood line, I took her to the same section where I encountered those 6 figures. She took off running, and we found her in the entrance just laying down on the ground. She had no energy. We picked her up and took her to safety. And then one of the other guys that was there with that team, the same thing happened to them, but they got dropped. Like, they had no energy, and they just were laying on the ground. So I had to pick them up and get them out of there also. The weird thing about that both of them, the same things were happening to them, the same, like the side effect of whatever happened to them. They said they were seeing some dark figures of some sort, and they kept on seeing the dark figures. So I don't know exactly what I was seeing because I could not see them with my eyes, but they were describing what they were seeing. What they were describing was actually kind of like what I've seen that night in the woods. So I don't know exactly what attacked them, or if a dogman is that fast that they could actually drop somebody in the ground through just touching them.
Whatever it was that they ran into, if it was scary enough to spook them and run them out of the woods like that, being ghost hunters and everything, it must have been really spooky. With some of the things you've been talking about going on in that area, it sure makes it sound like you've got some kind of demonic activity going on or something like that that's above and beyond dogman issues.
I tried to figure out what was going on because, like I said, I seen the one that took off running down the road. It never disappeared, so I figured it was nothing of a spirit because I've seen its form actually running away. And then I had this other incident in which I didn't know what a dogman was, like I said, till like 3 days ago. But I'm just trying to make sense of everything that happened to me that night and the other things that I've seen here in this park.
Yeah, that was such a strange occurrence. You could put a lot of thought into it and still not be able to make any sense out of it.
Till this day, I don't know what it could be, but I do remember seeing these creatures there. And the one running down the street in which it was no deer, because I know how deers look like. It was all muscular, very muscular, big creature.
As if that wasn't all strange enough, all the things we've already gone over, you said there was a woman who was found dead alongside a road nearby. Tell us about that.
Yes, it was a Puerto Rican woman. She was always coming, borrowing cigarettes, asking my sister would give her a cigarette. She would cut through the wood line, not to where I had the encounter, but she would cut nearby there. I was cutting through the wood line to get to the main road to go to the corner store. Well, one day, early in the morning, she got run over by a vehicle. The person said that she just jumped in the way of the vehicle, but this woman, she was never depressed or would be a woman that's just going to jump in the way of a vehicle. So how she got in front of the vehicle, I really do not know. The only thing I know is that the man said she came out of the wood line and jumped in front of the vehicle. But she's traveled this path and done this walk to the store many, many times.
Did the bystanders say anything about how it might have looked like she was running from something?
The only thing he said is that she jumped in the way of his vehicle. That's all he said.
That's the only thing that I could think of that would make sense to explain why she might have done that.
I believe so too. If something was chasing her and she just gonna jump in the way, she must have been running with some fear. And the path that she would walk through the woods, there was no other path. There was nothing. She would make her own path and just cut through the woods itself.
Also, this was not the path that you used to take to go to the store then.
Yes, she would just cut through the woods itself. She would not go through no main path. She would just cut through the woods.
Well, I'll tell you what, Abe, it's about time to wrap this show up. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yes, the thing I would like to say is if anybody ever encounters what I believe to be now the dog man, don't be afraid. It's going to try to scare you. It's trying to see if you're going to run. Try to get to safety the safest way as possible, even if you have to reroute the path that you walked. But I believe if you pray within yourself that through prayer you can go back into safety. Just not be afraid. Even though it's going to be a scary sight if you ever encounter the dog man, just don't be afraid. It's harder said than done, but I believe that you can go into safety. Just to try to get there safely, as not run out of the vicinity, but just walk away from it, because I believe if you do run away, it's going to know you're afraid and it might come after you, like any other kind of wild animal.
Yeah, keeping your composure when you're faced with something like that, that is, like you said, much easier said than done, but those are really good words nonetheless. Abe, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it to share my story with you.
Oh, thanks again for coming. Well, have yourself a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. If you've had a dogman encounter and you'd like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you. Episode 54. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. Before we bring on tonight's first guest, I wanted to let you know if you're a dog maniac and can't get enough of the topic, my buddy Brenton Sawin has a YouTube channel with some Dogman related shows. I'd highly recommend you take a look at his channel. He's got some good content there. Tonight's first guest is Robbie Anderson. Robbie, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
My name is Robbie Anderson. I've been a touring musician for the past 6 years. I also dabble in media arts and figurative arts and pretty much all kind of artistic things. I grew up in southern Florida and as well as a little bit up in the north in North Carolina in the mountains. And that's pretty much about it so far.
You said you're a traveling musician. Are you an axe man, or what do you play?
I do vocals. I do play a little bit of every instrument, but when it comes to live performance, I usually just do vocals.
Oh, I've got you. When you were growing up, what kind of interest did you have in cryptids like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, you name it?
I can't say like I was too crazy about it, like searching it up or anything, but anytime like Monster Quest or something like that would come on the TV, I'd definitely sit down and watch it for hours and hours. Those things usually interested me. But I'd probably say Bigfoot more than anything because, you know, it's like the most common thing you see out there.
Oh, sure, yeah, there's no arguing the point that Bigfoot's number one. Not long after we had our pre-interview, you spoke to an older lady who had some very interesting stories to share about a big wolf, as she described it, that was known to go up onto two legs and terrorize people nearby to where she lived in Florida. The name that the people in that area had given this cryptid was the swamp dog. Please tell us about the swamp dog.
Well, as I told you, I'm no expert on it. All I know is what she's told me, but she has told me a few stories about how when she was younger, her parents would tell her about the swamp dog. And from what I've been told, it's usually when you see it at first, it just looks like a normal wolf walking on all fours. Or usually it's in a very swampy area in the water, probably trying to catch some fish or food. And people stumble upon it, you know, when they're hunting or going in their boats. And people describe it as standing up and then going from about probably 4 to 5 feet on 4 legs to about 6 to 7 feet on 2 legs. And it usually, you know, bares its teeth or looks very aggressive, looks very mean, and then, you know, runs off into a different direction. She never told me that about any attacks or anything. She told me about where this dog would terrorize camping because we have a lot of RV like camping spots around, you know, southern Florida and even northern Florida, all over Florida. And people would go out there with their tents and their RVs, and she would tell me stories about how this thing would just kind of run through campsites and knock over things and not really like investigate or anything, kind of just like barrel through, you know what I mean? Kind of like a linebacker in football going through the defensive line, kind of just like taking out whatever it could and then just keep going. And, you know, most people would think it's a bear, but from what people said, they're like wolf prints, you know, like, and in Florida we don't really have wolves. There are some wolves if you look it up online, but they're very small. They're kind of like small foxes. It's as big as they get here. And they would just say these footprints are at least, you know, big enough to have something that, you know, matches. It could be, people would think it's Bigfoot or skunk ape as they call them down here. And, you know, she would just tell me stories about, you know, when she was a kid, how her parents would tell her about this swamp dog, you know, terrorizing camps and scaring the living crap out of people who are traveling in through the woods and the swamps.
Yeah, from what you just shared, I get the impression that it didn't seem to want to hurt anyone. It just wanted to terrorize people and then move on.
Yeah, that's definitely the vibe I got from it, was that it didn't want to eat anybody, but it definitely did want to scare them.
That's how it seems. You said you grew up in the southern Florida area of the country. If you were that close to the Everglades, Growing up, did you ever hear tales about any other type of werewolf-like creatures down that way?
Not really. I kind of lived like super south. Like I was born in the Florida Keys, so I was like down, very far away from where there would be any kind of swamps or anything. Just island after island, and didn't really hear any stories too much down there. We'd hear, giant sharks and stuff like that, but nothing really about any wolves or dogs or Bigfoot even.
Exactly how much experience do you have out in the woods there, Robbie?
I wouldn't say like I'm an experienced hunter or anything, but as a kid, I definitely played in the woods a lot. I rode BMX bikes out there, and we would have like little stick wars, shoot each other bows and arrows we made, and all that kind of stuff. But as an avid adventurer, I wouldn't say I'm too experienced.
Before you tell us about your encounter, please tell us about where it happened, because your encounter happened at a very unique place.
I live in the Denellen, Ocala area, around north central Florida, and there's a road called High School Road, which the local high school here is on, and it's actually just so happens to be the road that Jeepers Creepers was filmed on. And the red barn and everything's there, and the super long road with the fields on the side where the bus gets, the tire gets popped and everything, it stops there. That's that creepy old road we had to go down every day in the bus going to school. But that's the area. It's kind of a odd and ironic area to have an experience, I think.
Were you around that area when Jeepers Creepers was filmed, or what?
Actually, I still lived in the Keys. Actually, it was one of the first movies I went to the movie theater ever to see with my dad. I was about 6 years old when it came out. I was still down south. I was not in this area.
All right, Robbie, please tell us about your encounter, beginning with when you were leaving the studio that night, and take us all the way through when you told the first person that you told about your encounter.
All right. Well, it was probably a good 4 or 5 months ago at this point. I was, late session recording, trying to get some ideas flowing and get some new songs out there for a strong comeback after taking a break for a year and just kind of being not around social media or anything. I took a break to myself to, just revitalize myself and, get some new ideas coming out. And after a long day of recording, it was probably got to be 2, 3 a.m. It was just really, really late, and I was super tired. And I was heading down through the back roads because it's just a lot easier because we have these, our traffic lights are the worst. It's like red light in the middle of the night for like 5 minutes, I swear, like for no reason. It's just like we're just staying there. And so I just avoid all the traffic lights and go through the back roads. And I was turning onto High School Road, and probably as I was getting probably maybe 50 to 100 feet down the road, I saw something kind of crouched in the middle of the road there. And so I stopped because, I didn't want to hit a cow or, I thought it might have been some roadkill or something. I don't want to hit it. My car's pretty low down to the ground, so if I hit it, it's probably going to, screw me all up. And so I stopped, and I probably get maybe 10 to maybe 5 to 10 feet away from it. And I noticed that this thing's a lot bigger than I thought it was. It was kind of like dark brownish, but like as it kind of got towards its leg, it was like really reddish brownish. Like it was kind of like two-toned. And I just kept, like, the first thing I remember thinking to myself was like, that's definitely not a raccoon or something, what I thought it was, or a cow, I was like, that's weird. And I noticed it looked back at me, and it kind of, and then it started standing up, and this is when I got really scared, because like I said, my car is pretty low bearing to the ground. So this thing easily towered over my car, like probably like step over my car if it really wanted to. And this thing was just massive. Like it just stood up and just like looked at me. And remember, it has like really dark glowing. Imagine like if you're like seeing like a Yu-Gi-Oh character or something. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but like how like all their monsters are like really dark glowing red eyes, and that kind of is what the first thing kind of ran through my head. It looked kind of like like blood. It was kind of like glowing blood eyes, and It kind of was just kind of like panting like a dog, kind of. His like mouth was slightly open, and I just remember it kind of like panting a little bit, or that's what it looked like it was doing. And then it kind of ever so swiftly turned and just bolted into the cow fields that were surround this entire road. And these cow fields have like pretty high fences, and the fences are barbed wire and everything. And this thing just kind of gracefully, doesn't even look like it had to jump, just kind of walks over this fence and just keeps going. And well, swiftly walked. Like it wasn't like, you know, walking nonchalantly, you know, with no cares or anything. But it just like, it didn't even look like it had to jump or even hop. It just kind of just went right over this fence, went right into the woods, and I never saw it after that. It's kind of sat there in disbelief for probably a good 30 seconds, and then just hauled down the road and all the way home.
When it was crouched down in the road there, did you ever get an idea what it might have been doing?
You know, my first thought was maybe it was, you know, eating something, but like I said, I didn't notice anything else in the road there. It was just kind of crouching there, and my second thought is maybe it was, you know, taking a break, because it did look like it was panting a bit, because its mouth was kind of open, as dogs kind of, when they're hot, you know how like they kind of just keep their mouth open a little bit? That's kind of what I have been thinking, but, you know, I really have no idea what it could have been, you know, doing, just chilling there in the middle of the road.
You talked about its size. You said it looked like it might have been able to step over your car. You talked about how easily it went over the high cattle fence. You ever get an impression, how tall do you think this thing was?
Honestly, like, I felt like, I've met Shaq in real life, and I felt like he was like the size of Shaq. Like, he was at least 6-7 feet tall. Like, he was very, very big.
Did you get a good look at its leg structure to know what kind of legs it had? Were they canine style or hominid style?
So I really didn't get too much of a good look, because, you know, once it got out of the way of my car, you know, my lights weren't shining on it anymore, so it was blending in very well with the dark, and I didn't see too much of its legs, and I was just way too focused on its kind of its head, trying to figure out, you know, if it wanted to eat me, or, you know, if it was going to attack me, or what it was going to do. But I unfortunately didn't get too much of a good look at its legs.
As it was going past you, what was the distance when it was at its closest?
Easily touching the car. Like, I have no idea if it did, but I remember when it did turn, I had this feeling like, you know, it was going to, like, flip the car or something, you know, go, like, full Hulk or something. But definitely when it was turning, its arm and hand was definitely so close to the car that it might have actually touched my car.
When you got that good look at it in the headlights, you mentioned the two-tone color it seemed to have. Without me being too specific with this question, did you notice any other peculiar quality it had as far as its markings or color went?
I'm pretty sure I told you in the pre-interview where it kind of had like almost kind of like hyena kind of looking thing, you know, where they have kind of like little, almost kind of like cheetah print kind of looking little, like U's towards the bottom of this waist area. You know, like where the legs and the waist meet. The waist and the legs meet, kind of like where the colors start to shift almost. I noticed where there was kind of like a little, looked kind of like almost like wounds almost. Like it was kind of like dark, kind of like U's, like kind of like a horse hoof kind of, but, you know, like not as big.
Well, that's interesting. You didn't mention anything about the hyena prints in the pre-interview. This is the first I had heard of that, but I want to share something with you. If dogmen have hyena prints, for whatever reason, they almost always have them from the waist down. On only a very few occasions have I heard about people reporting dogmen that had hyena prints like that above the waist. I don't know what that's all about, but what you're telling me, it blends perfectly with what I'd expect to hear. What kind of weight would you expect this thing to have?
Oh, man. I feel like it kind of was massive, but not like in a fat way, you know, like very muscular. So I feel like it was definitely, it's gotta be like 600 pounds maybe. But, you know, it's gotta have that muscle mass to be able to move that quickly with that weight. But I definitely feel like it would be at least 600 pounds.
It must have been a specimen, to say the least. Since your window was up, you probably couldn't smell anything, but I still want to ask you if you did hear any sounds or smell any smells when this thing was right there by your car.
I think, there's just too much adrenaline at the moment when I was there that I don't remember smelling or hearing anything. I do remember hearing its feet kind of patter, when it started running. But I don't remember, hearing any, noises it was making from its mouth or any smells.
Moving on, you said that you never got the impression that dogman wanted to hurt you, but did you ever get the impression it was upset about you being there, interrupting its actions or activities, whatever it had been doing?
Yeah, I definitely didn't. From the actions it kind of did as it just kind of ran away, it didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me at all. And when it looked at me, it looked super scary, to say the least, but I didn't feel like it wanted to cause harm to me. But, I could be reading that wrong, But I don't feel like it was upset with me or, that I was interrupting it or whatever. I feel like it was more kind of, confused maybe, because it kind of just got up and was like, am I in the way or something? And then kind of just left. So I feel like it was maybe more confused than anything.
With that being such wide open country, it sure does make you wonder why something like that would decide to take a nap in the middle of a highway like that when it's got all those places where it could do that and never be seen. Your instance there is not the only time where they've done something like that. A lot of other people have been in the same type of situation as what you found yourself in that night. Have you ever heard about any dogman encounters in that area that other people have had?
Not in this area exactly. Besides the swamp dog stories I've heard down south from Edna, I haven't really heard any other dogman sightings. When I asked you about it, you did send me that link on your website to the dogman encounter in Florida, but besides that, I really have not heard anything besides those few stories.
Well, that's a good thing then. At least you don't seem to have a population of them down there. If you did, you'd probably hear about more encounters down that way. But moving on, when you hear friends talk about heading out to camp, fish, you name it, do you try to steer them away from doing those activities now because you know they're out there, or what?
I don't. I actually love the woods, Every time with my friends, we just go out and sit by the creeks up in North Carolina and just really enjoy it. I wouldn't, steer them away, maybe because I love nature and I love the trees and I love just everything about it. And if they're out there, I'm definitely going to be a little bit more careful and a little bit more cautious about the areas I'm in and be a little bit more respectful now, knowing that, they're out there. But I don't think I, try to keep people from going to enjoy the outdoors.
I hate the fact that you did have that encounter, but at least it did give you the upper hand to know that they are out there, so that now you can adjust your behavior to hopefully protect yourself more than if you didn't even know that they were out there in the first place. So I guess there is some kind of positive spin that we could put on this. But what kind of changes have you made in your life as a result of having that encounter? You just mentioned that you still like to go out into the wilderness and enjoy various things, but I'm sure there are some kind of changes you have made to help protect yourself from another run-in with one of these things.
Well, I definitely don't travel that road at night anymore. I definitely do wait through the long stoplights now. But, I really don't know how too many changes in the area I live to protect myself or try to avoid them because, I grew up in this town a little bit, for at least for my teenage years. This is kind of where I was, and this is kind of where I made a lot of my memories. So I kind of just in the same routine. So I really don't know how to change it up to avoid it. The way I see it is it was just fate. Everything happens for a reason, and if I'm meant to meet up with these things again, and hopefully it's gonna be as passive as it was, but I really besides not taking that road at night anymore, I really don't know what else I can do to kind of ensure I don't see one again.
You mentioned not traveling that road after dark. Does that mean also you can't go camping again now that you know they're out there?
That's a possibility. I never really camped too much as a kid, and I don't like really being outdoors at night anyway, so I definitely don't camp. And that's one more reason to add to the list of why I don't camp.
Well, regardless of your reasoning for not liking the woods, now that you've had this encounter, I don't think anyone could blame you for having a strong dislike for being out there after dark, to say the least. But is there anything noteworthy that happened that night that I'm missing here you'd like to reveal?
I mean, as cliche as it sounds, it was very bright that night. It wasn't a full moon, but the moon was 3/4 of the way full, and it was just casting a very bright light. So like things were a little bit more visible. Like once it got towards the trees, like I said, it gets a lot darker. You know, the shade of the trees and everything. But the road was pretty, you know, a lot brighter than it normally would be on that road because there's no street lights or anything out there. So I mean, it wasn't like daytime bright out there, but it was bright enough to where if I happened to get out of the car, I could probably, you know, I could see, you know, my car from at least a foot away. But usually on that road, it's pitch black. It's, you know, if there is something out there, you're not going to see it, no matter, you know, if you have a light or not.
Yeah, considering the history of that area, it's not like you need a dog man running around there to make that place any creepier than it already is. But do you know of a high number of people or pets that have gone missing in that area?
I do know, when I was a few years younger, probably before I moved up north, a lot of cattle did start dying. And it wasn't just kind of like keeling over, they were attacked, you know, but people thought they were just, you know, a large number of coyotes moving down into the area or something like that. And, I mean, our area has coyotes, and foxes and stuff like that, but they're very small. Like, they're the size of house cats here. Like, they're very tiny. So, like, I was like, there's no way that something that small is taking down these cows, because these cows are huge, you know? So I was like, there's no way. So, and, like, they weren't, like, mutilated or anything, but, like, they were, like, definitely, they were, like, you know, gnawed on and eaten a bit up. And, there was a cow field right behind where I live, and I do remember, you know, seeing a few dead cows out there when I was younger, wondering kind of like why, because, you know, all the cows, you know, they were there for years as I was growing up, and we used to mess around with them, you know, like run out in the cow field and get chased by the bull and climb up the lonely tree in the middle of the pasture. And I do remember seeing a few dead ones there and noticing around town that there definitely were a lot of cows getting taken out. But besides that, I really don't know of any stories of like dogs or cats or pets going missing.
When you and your buddies were out there in the pasture giving the bull and the cows a hard time, did you get into any cow tipping?
We tried to cow tip, but we didn't know what we were doing, so when we would get near it, we start laughing, trying to push it, and it's so much harder than it looks. Like, there's so much heavier. Like, we're like, okay, we're just gonna push this thing over, and then it was just like we'd push with all our force and nothing would happen. Like, it wouldn't even like stumble. It would just kind of like wake up and look at us, and we'd start running.
You know, it's funny. I used to work with a guy who, as a kid, used to love to cow tip, but he went out one time and made the mistake of trying to tip a bull, and that cured him of his fascination with doing that. It wasn't pretty how that ended out, but anyway, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, if you do have any encounters, definitely contact Vic. You definitely do feel a lot better after you talk to somebody who is open-minded and knows, you know, about these creatures. As Vic always says, there's no experts in this field, but an unbiased ear is definitely something that goes a long way when it comes to getting the grief and the, you know, like the pressure of, you know, having this on you with no one to really talk to about. If you do see one, I mean, I wouldn't let it affect your life too much. I mean, I do understand, like, it's definitely traumatic, and it definitely has me scared of the nighttime now. I used to love the nighttime, but try to, just coexist with it. Because, I mean, these things have obviously been around for hundreds of thousands of years, probably as long as we've been around, maybe longer. And we've coexisted with them this long. I'm sure we can continue to coexist that way. But the more we invade the forest, then I'm sure they get more aggressive. But that's a whole different topic. And I mean, I just definitely contact Vic and tell him your stories and your encounters, and keep up the great show.
Well, thanks again so much for coming on the show, Robbie, and thanks for those good words. I really appreciate it.
Of course, anytime. Big fan of the show.
Oh, well, thanks for listening. Well, have yourself a great night, okay?
I will, and you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Our second guest tonight is Andrew Maselli. Andrew, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, Vic.
Oh, it's great to have you here, buddy. Andrew, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Okay, my name is Andrew Maselli. I was born in East Los Angeles, California. My grandparents were full-blooded Native American, Apache. My other side of my family I don't know because my father was orphaned, Italian. I'm an artist. For the past, say, 7 years, I've been living overseas. I'm a backpacker. I like to travel the world, but I've been living in Asia, specifically Cambodia. I've been in Cambodia for about the past 7 years. I help run an orphanage over there, working with human trafficking prevention, and got the orphanage up and running. Then I was working with landmine removal, like EOD, and I was an educator. I was currently riding a motorcycle. I rode a motorcycle across Thailand to Burma to Laos, and I was in a bad accident in Cambodia. So the past 2 years, I was 1 year, 9 months on my back. My leg was severed. They reattached my leg in Saigon. I just spent 2 years in the hospital, 1 year getting surgeries. I've had 9 surgeries. And I just spent the last year learning to walk again. And now I am good. I am up and running, and I am currently in the Emerald, they call it the Emerald Triangle, up here in Humboldt County, California, Northern California. Beautiful place up in the Redwoods. And that's about it.
I'll tell you what, buddy, I'm so glad that you're back to good health and to the point where you're dangerous again. That's good news right there. You're doing this interview from a very unique place. Please tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I'm up here in Northern California. My encounter, which you'll hear about, actually happened at a place called Psalms Bar, Orleans. It's very close to what some of your listeners might recognize, Bluff Creek, where the Patterson film was filmed, the Bigfoot, that original film, the Patterson film. Very close to that. So close that I used to go drive to Bluff Creek to go get coffee. So it's pretty close. It was right up the road. I used to live up there. We're on the Hoopa Indian Reservation. And yeah, it's a really, really beautiful place. And I'm actually doing this interview from a few miles south, and I'm actually, if I stand up, I'm currently looking at the riverbed where the Patterson film was filmed, the sandbars and the water. And I'm very, very close. So I'm up at the Hoopa Indian Reservation just south of Bluff Creek in Northern California.
I can't even imagine how neat it would be to knock around that area. An area that's so famous and well known and everything. That must be unreal.
Yes, very beautiful too. Very beautiful.
And by the way, everyone, before we really get underway with the show here, if you're wondering if Andrew's half as nice as he seems, trust me when I tell you the guy is. I've been talking to him for some time, wanting to bring him on the show forever. And Andrew is as advertised. He's just about the nicest guy you'll ever meet. Great guy.
Well, thank you, Vic. I appreciate that. And same to you.
Well, thank you. Not hardly on my account, but I appreciate the good words anyway. All right, Andrew, let's dive into this thing. First question I've got for you is, what kind of role does the dogman play in Apache culture?
Okay, well, the dogman in particular, I'm not too sure of. Like I said, I am half Native American Apache. We are from the White Mountains, Arizona. I did have the unique gift, I guess you'd say, of my grandfather. I was raised by my grandma and grandfather, who are full-blooded Apache, and my grandfather used to babysit me, and at night he would rock me to sleep, and he'd always tell me stories. That's what put me to sleep. Actually, him and his father, he grew up in the woods, in the mountains. His father used to go actually ride, I think it was his horse or his donkey up in the Superstition Mountains or something, he would tell me. But I didn't get a lot of it wasn't like he was an elder, so I don't have a lot of information on how it plays exactly in the culture. But I have heard a few things. For instance, an old-timer told me that in our culture, we, I guess, would say, and I've heard a lot of dogmen described as almost a coyote, but walking coyote. And apparently, when the Creator was creating man and coyote, coyote wanted man to be on all fours. That I know is part of the legend in the culture. So there was a kind of a back and forth between man and coyote. Coyote wanted man to be on fours. So anyways, that's about what it is. Also, coyotes are tricksters, represented as a trickster, whatever that may mean by maybe being on all fours, being able to walk. I have a few theories on why dogmen are around Native American burial mounds, but maybe we'll get to that later.
Sure, I'd love to cover that. One thing I'm hoping you can answer for me. I've seen Sasquatch depicted on Native American totem poles, but I've yet to see any dogmen on one. Any idea why that is?
No, that you've got me on that also. If anything, I believe dogmen in our culture, in the Native culture at least, is more of a protector. And I have a theory, my personal theory, is why dogmen are seen around burial mounds, Native American burial mounds. Maybe it's not so much that the dogmen are attracted to there. Possibly, it would cross my mind that maybe like warriors are buried there and such. Basically, there's places where dogmen, Native people know where dogmen are, territories, and they choose to bury their dead there, knowing that a lot of people aren't going to go into those areas. And maybe it's not something you want to advertise. You know what I mean?
That sounds like a good idea if you don't want someone to mess with graves. If you know of a hot spot for these things, I can't think of a better place to bury your loved ones.
Yes, especially if parents are telling their kids, don't go in there, it's dangerous, knowing it's a dangerous place, and you want to keep, your loved ones at peace or rest and honor them for resting into the afterlife. Well, that sort of makes sense.
That does make really good sense. To go back to something you brushed over just a bit ago in the interview here, you said that in your culture they're seen as being protectors. I'm kind of foggy on something here. If they're seen and portrayed as being protectors, do the Apache elders say to fear them, not fear them, respect them, or both?
Actually, I'd say both. Definitely common sense would say to fear them, but definitely more than anything in Apache culture and all native cultures is respect of all living things. So I would say both, but more than the other, one more than the other would be to respect for sure.
Oh, I see. In that Bluff Creek area, how do people look at the whole dogman phenomenon?
Well, to be honest, that's a funny question because even before the interview, my own nephews were teasing me. It's really funny. Willow Creek up here, Bluff Creek, around here, Hoopa is the Sasquatch hotspot of the planet. I mean, this is where it's happening, where there's a lot of sightings, and the culture here is well knows about them for a long time. The culture up here, actually, and native culture in general, looks at Sasquatch as a clan. Now, I know we're talking about dogmen. You just don't hear anything about dogmen up here.
There's so many angles you can approach it from. It's really hard to figure out half of this stuff. All you can do is just take bits and pieces of info and do the best you can to formulate some opinions, I guess.
Yes, definitely. And that's all we're doing. And in my heart, I'm sure there's dogmen packs. I'm sure there's Sasquatch clans, and they don't want to be found for whatever reason, which may not be a bad thing with humans. You know what we generally do when we find a species? It doesn't really last that long. But anyways, yeah, you don't really know. So I'm just guessing. This is just my everything. I hope I don't offend anyone out there with my opinions. These are just my opinions.
Oh, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, so no harm, no foul there. What you just mentioned does tie into my next question, though, which is, why do you think it is that the cryptid community accepts the existence of Sasquatch so much more readily than the existence of dogmen?
I believe probably because dogmen is such a stretch for anybody who's grounded in quote-unquote everyday reality. You know what I mean? It's just such a far stretch. Sasquatch, you think, well, the average person, missing link. I mean, it's a prime. Is it a primate? Is it human? It's so close to us. But dogmen, from my understanding, you have dogmen from what they call the dire wolf, hellhound, all the way up to the dogman that can just rear up, all the way to, you're more of an expert on any of this than me, but dogmen that, they basically walk and run on two legs. They just go down on all fours sort of to get speed, get back up, and then you have dogmen that are almost, to me, personally, like I said, it's just an opinion, but I think possibly even made it with a Sasquatch. And that's where you get the almost baboon looking, like the Seven Shoots photo, just where they're massive, almost Sasquatch / dogmen. Who knows what goes on out here in the woods?
It is hard to figure out how they can have so many different looks. I mean, they do come in all different shapes and sizes, just like what you mentioned, trying to figure out where they came from and how they wound up looking like that.
Well, Vic, my personal thought is, like I said, it's just my opinion, but what if, I'm just saying what if back before, as all the legends say, there was an advanced culture that was messing with genetic material, and therefore you'd have, just say they wanted to make a bigger, more powerful beast of burden. But that beast of burden over how many tens of thousands of years goes out and is in the wilderness, and it mates with this, and it mates with that. And before you know it, you've got everything from almost an upright standing, basically timber wolf that's 7 feet tall, to something with, doesn't have hocks, but has actually kneecaps. I mean, I've heard of everything, and doesn't have paws, but has fingers. So maybe if there was something going on in the past, whether it was natural or a little bit of help with genetic manipulation, maybe these things just started evolving naturally on their own. And that's why you have so many different species and so many different looks. Some look like the Onaway photo looks like a chow almost, the thing I saw in my encounter, that was just a combination of things. Some of them looked like a Sasquatch, literally a Sasquatch wolf. So, yeah, it's interesting, but I'm sure they evolve each in their own way, and the hybrids are happening all the time. I sent you that photo of the puppy that we found up here in the woods, and that thing is, man, I mean, what is that, a chow, timber wolf, chow, Akita? It's just a funky-looking dog, but it's definitely not a purebred, I don't think. You know, I don't know, it's a feral dog. Anyways, that's an opinion.
Well, we've all got them. It is awfully hard to figure out the origins. I am a believer in the fact that there are aliens out there. Whether or not aliens came here eons ago and seeded the earth with what we call today dogmen, I don't know. I'm not qualified to even make an opinion on that, but I guess anything's possible. As far as them interbreeding with Sasquatch and winding up looking like Type 3s do with their hominid-style legs and everything, that I have a hard time believing. But anyway, let's move on to the next topic here, Andrew. What we've all been waiting for. I've been looking forward to giving you a chance to talk about that encounter that you and Andy had. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, so back in the day, I had my encounter at 95, and let me just state from the get-go that I'm not saying I saw a dog man, but what I saw, definitely, I have no idea what it was. I've never seen anything like it, and the closest I could relate it to was I had no reference point. After I had my encounter, the only thing I can relate it to was what they called a hellhound or a devil dog or a dire wolf. And when I saw him, I said, I have seen the dire wolf, or all three of those into one. Anyways, okay, back in the mid-90s, me and my buddy, we were quite seasoned travelers. We were following a band called the Grateful Dead. I'm sure you've heard of them. And we were making a living, going from concert to concert, selling food and stuff. And it was just a great time in life. We were traveling every state across the country, been down pretty much every dirt road you can imagine from here to New York and back. Did that for several years. But when they would stop what they call tour, we would always head on up here to Hoopa and hang out and sort of recoup for a couple months, you know, and just hang out there on the salmon and the Klamath where they come together. I actually literally, because I'm native, I lived with my sister. We had a cabin literally on the bluff overlooking where the salmon and the Klamath come together. Phenomenal, beautiful, very special place in the native culture. So I'm up here. Down the road, I had a friend that lived, and me and my buddy, we used to go hang out there. So we're down at the place at my buddy's, and I remember we had run out of cigarettes. So we went to the store. We went down the road. It's a windy road, and it's like that same sandbar area, that same very area where the Patterson film was filmed. Anyways, we were driving down that road. We went to the store, got cigarettes, and when we were coming back, there's a big bend in the road. It does an actual C, a big C. So you are not able to see what's as you're coming around the road. But boom, right there, dead in the center of the road, was sitting the biggest, massive, crazy-looking, it almost looked like a cross between I had no reference point at the time. A black bear it was the size of like a small black bear, not a medium-sized black bear, canine wolf thing. That's the only way I could describe it. It was insane, massive. It was just a crazy moment. It was like, what? We actually drove off the road to go around it. Now, I know people have had encounters in the past where they might have seen something dark, but I saw this thing clearly. Everything. Locked eyes with it, everything. Massive. I'd say, to describe it, I got a very good look at it. Sitting in the middle of the road, had to be sitting down, had to be about 4.5 feet from sitting down to the tops of its ears. It had pointed ears. It had a muzzle like a wolf. It looked just like a massive, it looked almost like a timber wolf crossed with a grizzly bear. That's the only way I could describe it. It was massive. And it just had this bizarre look, man. I mean, it had the most bizarre look that it actually was, I don't know if I want to say annoyed. I'll just say it. Annoyed that we saw it. It actually had a look to it. And we actually went off the road to go around it like, what? We skidded. What is that? And it just looked at us, and it just sort of, that's when I say it looked annoyed, and we made locked eye contact, and it just sort of trotted off down into the riverbank. And yeah, that was it. It was a brief encounter, but it was, it stuck with me to this day. And I'll tell you one thing. I used to hitchhike that road every single day. For years, I hitchhiked that road. I never hitchhiked that road again. And I don't scare easy.
Yeah, I can't say I'd blame you for not wanting to hitchhike on that road after seeing something like that. In the pre-interview, you said the creature's shoulders looked strange. What was so strange about them?
They were massive. The thing almost looked like, there you go, here you go. If you crossed a timber wolf, a grizzly bear, and a hyena, because its back was huge, absolutely massive. The shoulders and back, absolutely massive. Almost like you know how a dog has its arms go straight down from its shoulders? This went out, almost like it was muscular, like it had biceps. It was just massive, like a pit bull. It was just so strange looking. It just made no sense. You're like, you can't believe what you're seeing when you see something like this, other than get the heck out of here.
Yeah, that had to be one heck of a sight to see. I can't even imagine that. What kind of coloration did this thing have?
The coloration of this animal was so bizarre. That's another thing. It would look like almost the color. It was massive, sort of like a bear, but it had pointy ears, definitely really pointy ears. It had almost spotted, grayish fur. And another thing I didn't tell you, I told you the size, it was about 350 pounds. I guesstimate 2, maybe even 400 pounds. It was massive. I'd say more around 400. It was massive. I'd say 350 to 400 pounds. It was just massive. It didn't get up and walk on 2 legs, but I saw it very, very clearly from the front, and when we tried skid it around it from the side. It was very multicolored, but it was gray. It had almost gray patches. Beautiful in a weird way. Spooky way, but very, very stunning, beautiful. Just freakishly beautiful in a weird way.
Oh, it sounds like it. From the way you described its appearance, it almost sounds like its coat had a Timberwolf type pattern on it. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
That had to be a sight to see. When you guys were driving around it as it was sitting there in the road still, I guess holding its ground, you said it looked agitated at you. Was it watching you the whole time that you were doing that, or what?
Absolutely. In fact, I got the feeling, it didn't dawn on me then, but later when I thought about it, I got the feeling maybe, possibly, because the way it was sitting in the middle of the road, almost like it was guarding. Maybe it had pups or something that was crossing behind it, and it was holding its own. And, for us to go off the road in a car, it didn't budge. It didn't move, and it kind of just stayed there until it was finished what it was doing, and then it, like I said, it looked annoyed and trotted off.
Yeah, if you're that big and that tough, I don't think you'd have to move off the road for much of anything, so I can't really blame it for doing that.
Yes.
Have you heard about anyone else in that area having a dogman encounter?
No, I haven't, but I did tell you in the pre-interview, last week your guest had mentioned something about, and I've heard this about other encounters with dogmen, about screams. kind of almost sound like a woman screaming or something like that. And last week, the guest said it was a woman screaming for help or something. In the native culture, you hear about sounding like a baby crying. You know what I mean? But I had some friends that were camping up in the woods, and they were out hiking around, and they were 9 hours, they told me, 9 hours from any trail or road, way, way, way out in, go camping for a couple of days into the woods, and, well, from the road. They were 9 hours from the road, but in the middle of the night when they were packing up their headlamps and stuff, they heard, they thought, a scream, a human scream, pitch, the pitch was a human scream, screaming really loud, and it was aimed at them. That's what they said. It was aimed at them, freaked them out so much that they laid on the ground. And like I told you, they told me they laid on the ground, didn't go back to the campsite or nothing till the sun came up. So it must have been pretty scary. And they don't know what it was. And if it was a human, I mean, come on, 9 hours from a road, you know what I mean? I think they were scared, from my understanding. What one of them told me, that they were just so scared they hit the dirt and just didn't move because it kept on screaming, and it was focused at them. It wasn't just a one-time thing. This went on for a while, and so they just laid there and didn't move, and they laid there all night till the sun came up.
Yeah, I can't say I would have handled that any differently, so can't knock them for that. That had to be one heck of a strange situation. By the way, Andrew, do you have any opinions on how dogmen and Sasquatch interact?
A little bit. Yes, I do. I personally believe that, and I've heard this in native culture, that they live side by side and they're territorial. I believe personally, when you see the broken limbs across a trail or a tree trunk, broken branch, or even if you go up in Alaska, you'll even see where some Sasquatch clan claim territory. The natives say they actually take a tree and put it upside down, and that's marking a clan's territory. But I believe that when you hear a lot about when dogman area, that they're not broken branches, they're actually bent. They actually take it and they bend it, almost loop it over a path as a warning, hey, stay out, this is our territory. That's what I personally believe. I believe that Sasquatch, like I told you, Sasquatch and dogmen evolved side by side, and that they've developed certain territories for hunting and such. This makes sense. And I believe that they have separate territories. One marks their territory by breaking branches. The other one actually loops it over, and that's why you see a lot of that around the, I guess in the Midwest, around cornfields and stuff. Anyways, that's my opinion.
I'm still kind of foggy on how you look at dogmen with regards to how dangerous you see them as being. If you were living in dogman country and had kids of your own, would you be really worried about your kids' safety?
Absolutely, with kids. Absolutely. If I had kids and I knew there was dogmen around, or even Sasquatch, absolutely, 100%. For me personally, not an issue. I don't go looking for them, but even right now, as I'm talking to you at this moment on the phone, I'm hours into the redwoods. You know what I mean? I'm way up here, and for me, it's very peaceful. I love nature. I love the redwoods, and me personally, I'm not scared. But if I had children and I knew there's dogmen around, for sure. Even my pets, if I knew dogmen are around, I'd worry about my pets.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew, it's about time to wrap the show up. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Well, only that, like I say, I apologize. I don't mean to offend anybody on my personal thoughts about things. And, Vic, I hope I didn't stray too far off the topics. But I've had a really fun time, and I just want to tell you, I'd say if anybody has an encounter with a dogman, I know a lot of people go on the fear route for good reason, but I would just say the Native American way, just respect it. You can always go the other way. I wouldn't go looking for it because they're very dangerous. I hear a lot of your guests share that. But as far as that goes, we should respect them. We should respect all creatures. And on a personal note, Vic, thank you for what you do. We all really appreciate it, man. It's great stuff. And I thank you, Vic, for keeping your integrity. Like I said, 3 of my favorites, George Knapp, Dave Paulides, and Vic Cunduff. And I thank you, buddy.
Well, thanks so much for the good words. Like I said earlier, I'm so glad to finally be able to get you on the show here. I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. Thanks again so much for coming on.
Well, thank you, Vic, and hello to all your listeners. And I had a good time, Vic. I had a good time. Good talking to you, buddy.
Oh, it's always great talking to you too. Thanks again. Well, you have yourself a great night, okay?
Okay, and you don't be a stranger to me.
Count on it. That's no problem. Well, we'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, Vic.
Bye. If you've had a dogman encounter and you'd like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you.